it's nice to see everyone. Thanks for responding. I think Raul and I were talking about, how can we support the Commons as much as possible, considering time constraints and all that. But this is like, I guess we want to use it as a bit of a coaching call. There's a couple ways we could go about this. We could either kind of check in with everyone, or really dive deep and help somebody who's kind of got a pressing problem, and see if we can just help that person and then move on to the next one and see how many we can kind of support. So I guess the question I'll put out to you guys is there something specific that you have that you want to kind of work through with me and with this team? Or are you here for a kind of just to hear what's going on and get some insight? I'd be curious just to hear where everyone's at, because I want to support you guys. Dylan.
First off, I just want to say greetings to you, Jamie and Raul, and everyone here. So lovely to see you all. It's been a second. But yeah, for me, I think I kind of came just to hear other people's stories. And yeah, nothing drastic has changed, which is good for me. But I guess I do have like a few questions, but I'd like to hear others first.
Okay.
But yeah, it's lovely to see you all.
Likewise, Dylan, so happy to have you here. You made me think too, maybe as another way we could do it is if I am helping one individual, if thoughts and questions come to your mind, we can put them in the chat and then I can address them through that.
Sure.
Awesome.
Sorry for the hiccup on my mic, everybody. It always happens to me with this wire thing, but now I can hear you all. It's lovely to see you. Thank you for making it. Maybe just to add a little context, that the goal of this call is really for Jamie to offer advice and for you guys to leave with some guidelines or takeaways or perhaps next steps that are relevant to your challenges. So yeah, we can begin like Jamie mentioned. I have some questions that maybe can get the conversation started. And it's really about how we're navigating our biomimicry journeys, whether that's on a specific project or something that you're planning. But anyways, I just wanted to say welcome. And if somebody wants to jump in or has something in their mind, please go ahead to do so. I just wanted to say hi.
If no one else has anything specific, I actually have something that maybe we can kick us off with.
Awesome. Thanks, Monica.
So yeah, thanks Raul and Jamie for offering these sessions. So a bit of background is that I have education in mechanical engineering, but I haven't really done much technical work since graduating. And after taking the course last year, I kind of decided that I wanted to get more involved in the processes side of biomimicry. And so I decided to go back to school and do a master's in engineering. I kind of thought chemical engineering was the better way to go because I thought it would tie better in with processes, but I think there's some flexibility there. So kind of a two-part question is one, Jamie or Raul, even do you know any professors who are doing more research in biomimicry? I've done some research myself, but I thought I'd get your advice too. And then two is in terms of like a research topic that I want to do. But I guess top choices would be around like greenhouse gas emissions or energy production and storage. And then kind of secondary options would be more like sustainable materials or environmental remediation. So I found some professors doing research in artificial photosynthesis, which at a high level sounds really interesting. But I guess there's a couple of different ways that they're doing it. Either, they're using the process to create hydrogen, and then you can use that in for making other chemicals or, fuel cells. Um, or you can use it to take CO2 and turn it into like different chemicals like methanol, or turn it into methane, and then you can use that as another fuel. So I just kind of wanted to get your thoughts on artificial photosynthesis, and if it's really, a sustainable biomimic process. I think it only works in, like, if there's a closed loop, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so great to see you, Monica. I'm happy to hear, you're looking to, I remember when we were talking about your last job, it wasn't lighting you up. So I'm happy to see you moving on to something more aligned with your vision. I guess I want to go back to the first question about process and maybe get a little bit more insight on what you mean by process. Like, do you want to focus on chemical processes? Do you have like an area in mind? Is it like process-based biomimicry and how things are manufactured, or is it more specific? Or does that lead to your photosynthesis interests?
Yeah, I think it's more about like the biochemical processes, like on a small scale.
Okay. And what drew you to the masters over finding perhaps like a corporation or a startup?
Mostly because I haven't like done much technical work, and I've been out of school for a while, and I haven't done like chemistry in a long time. So I thought maybe it would be good to like go back and like refresh.
Yeah. And I guess the other question is that something that would light you up, is to have that technical background?
I think I would lean more towards it than doing more of like the business stuff.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. That makes sense. I only asked that too, because like one of the things I've noticed is that what you naturally want to do kind of shows up in your behaviors and your actions and your positions. Like if you are naturally an entrepreneur, you're more you might tend to be more in like management positions, or you might avoid the technical grinding work. And so since you've been working in a field that's more business oriented, I was just wondering if that's more like a natural path for you. Is that your natural trajectory? But if not, like you're the one that best knows that. It also sounds like it wasn't super exciting.
I think it's just been difficult to navigate out of that type of position in my company. So it's it's more operations.
Yeah.
And our engineering department in the company is very small. And I did do a rotation there, but I found like very traditional type of engineering was kind of boring.
Yeah.
So
is this master's then more about you kind of trying something new to see if it fits? It's like a non-committal kind of exploration?
yeah, I would say so.
Okay.
Like I'm not committed to doing this, whatever I end up doing the thesis on, I'm not like committed to doing that for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
And if it is interesting enough, then like maybe I'll do a PhD after if I choose to. But
Okay, cool. So then I guess to the second part of your question, which was about, do we know anyone in the field? I honestly think you're going to be the better person to find that out, because the answer is there's tons of people out there, and a lot of them doing biomimicry without calling it biomimicry. So like the photosynthetic thing. My personal experience is like you can create a degree out of, it doesn't matter what the professor does as long as it's in the realm. Like I did a PhD in biomimicry with a professor who's never, like barely had heard of biomimicry. And so it takes a little bit more leadership on your part, that you'll have to like really build a lab or figure it out. And also make sure, you can find your funding, or if they have funding, just recognize that what you want to do fits within their funding. And so that's just an interview process. Set up a bunch of interviews. And I would really push you to find a professor, even though a master's is a low risk, it's like just a couple of years. Find a professor you really align with. Otherwise, it's going to be a boring and annoying couple of years. Yeah, I mean, my recommendation is just like find a list of professors. I can shoot you a couple. There's a material scientist professor that I just connected with at U of T who's doing slime mold research and material research. Like he's using slime mold for transportation systems and trying to map out more effective transportation systems using slime mold, like they did in Japan. And he's also really big on material science and material biomimicry. He's specifically using biomimicry, and I'm happy to connect you to him. I haven't met him yet. We just connected over email. But yeah, I think that's the best thing I'd recommend is like put a list together of your top professors out there and start to judge them based on like a set of criteria that works for you. And then in terms of photosynthesis, I think that's an interesting question, whether it's sustainable or not. I think artificial photosynthesis, I think how I'd frame that in my mind is not so much like whether it's sustainable, but like I think you could use that as your opportunity to dig deep into a biological organism to find its brilliance. So if you remember in module 2, when we did the biology to design, the longer you spend time with a particular organism or system in nature, the more brilliance is going to emerge from it. And I think in a master's, it's like, I mean, to be frank, a master's really doesn't mean much, and your research isn't going to change the world. But what it could do is change your relationship with that thing, which could end up changing the world. Like I studied ecosystems, forest ecosystems, and the adaptive cycle, and it's completely changed my world. My thesis, nobody's read it. I'm sure my dad hasn't even read it. But what it has done is it's like formed my whole perspective and like formed this course and formed how I do urban planning. So I say this, it's like, if you're interested in the photosynthetic process, there's no better way to learn about it than to try to emulate it artificially. Like you will get to see how difficult it is and how beautiful nature is. And in that, maybe have this experience that teaches you something about how we could redo our photovoltaics, or you could use that knowledge as a jumping point for a career that really lights you up and excites you. So I guess that's all to say is like, don't be too worried about the outside perception of what you're working on. Focus more on what you're going to get out of it, because this is going to be a short stop on your journey to a biomimetic future. And if you can get an incredible insight into photosynthesis and leaf processes, like to me, I would do that for 2 years. Just learning how to try to emulate a leaf would be pretty cool to do. So I would encourage you just to kind of shift the perspective on that one.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. Yeah, I've done a lot of research, and maybe it's because like when you're reading all the like the research topics, after a while it all starts to blend together. So
Yeah,
I know, I think those are all really good points. So thanks, Jamie.
no problem. The other thing too, Monica, is often graduate advisors want you to come in with a bit of a thesis statement or a problem statement. So as you're reading these people's research, kind of don't necessarily try to fit in with what they're saying and see like, oh, can I be a good candidate for their research? Use what you're learning and formulate your own challenge, your own design problem. For example, my original PhD thesis was going to be on the relationship between indigeneity and biomimicry and how those two worlds correlate. And that's what really lit me up. And I went on a different journey, but I just say that because like find a statement that really makes you excited, and then go to professors, because often they get excited when people come up with fresh ideas, and they often have funding for these. Like they're not off the path of research that they're on. It's just like, it's still in the same direction. It's just like a different take and a different lens. So I'd really, before you jump into a master's, see if you can find that thesis statement that you'd want to explore for the next couple years.
Okay, yeah, sounds good.
Does that answer, like, do you feel complete with kind of all of that, or do you have any other questions or things that aren't answered?
No, I think it all makes sense. Like you said, if I were to go into artificial photosynthesis, like I don't have to, I'm not sure I would want to do exactly what they're already doing and just build off of that. I think it'd be more interesting to understand the process for myself and then go a different direction with that eventually.
Yeah.
But building that knowledge while I'm there is really important.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's an opportunity to be really selfish when you're putting together your vision for a master's. It's like, yes, you're helping somebody's lab, but also it's like they're getting really inexpensive labor. Like they're getting a lot out of you already, so you might as well get something as well, and make sure you get a project that really supports your future, the direction you want to go in.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thanks.
Yeah, no problem.
Great advice, Jamie. I just had a couple, I wrote a note on some things I wanted to recommend or suggest. In terms of researchers, maybe you found out about him, John Warner.
Oh yeah.
And he coined, or I don't know if he coined it, but he's like one of the big representatives of green chemistry. So he's all about letting the atoms, he basically says that a lot of the chemistry is us forcing atoms into doing things at high temperatures and, controlled settings. And he's more about understanding how chemistry happens in nature, which is just like, it's not forced. Whatever fits best, any molecule or atom at that level. So that's a pretty cool guy that I've heard about. He has some cool TED Talks as well. In terms of artificial photosynthesis, I think the field itself is already very broad. There's many aspects that you can go in. And I always like to think about the why. So like, why is it that people are getting into that, and maybe kind of frame that to an ecosystem or like an organism, but more just to say that, it's also about the research question, kind of like what Jamie was talking about. And what is it that you want to find out about artificial photosynthesis? Because when I think of that, it's like the sun has infinite power. There's lots of sun power out there. If anything, let's just plant more trees, right? And then the last thing is the value and the relationship that you will have with your advisor is key. So I think it's really about make sure that he or she has the same, that you guys are interested in similar things that pick your brain, the similar topics that you're kind of into. And if you have a good research question, you will discern that faster versus just doing a status quo topic, a status quo research, and him just kind of being there, versus really challenging you or getting him lit up or her lit up, to pursue that research question. So yeah, some notes I took, but thank you for kicking off the session, Monica. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for those extra thoughts, Ro.
Mm-hmm. And maybe I wanted to share some other questions that maybe can help us reflect, or maybe we can talk about as a group. How many are already working on specific projects that are applying biomimicry to? I know Dylan, you are with EcoSurf and all that in that project. Or maybe we want to talk about plans that we have to apply biomimicry to a project. That's a great topic to talk about here as well. Just putting it out there so we can chat. Oh yeah, and one last thing, Monica, please meet Ben. He was in our latest cohort, and I know he's into chemistry and all that stuff, and I'm sure he can give you some thoughts or cool references on photosynthesis. Unless I'm totally mistaken and I'm remembering the wrong thing, but I'm pretty sure that's right. Right, Ben?
I'm into it. I was thinking of Jai. I remember she had brought up kind of artificial photosynthesis versus mimicking how nature does it at some session.
Yeah.
Nice. Maybe I can put you in contact with her as well, Monica. Happy to do that. So yeah, there's even people in our community that are kind of thinking around those things as well.
Yeah, that would be awesome. Thanks.
You got it.
Maybe does anyone else want to share? Sorry, Ben, were you going to go there?
Yeah, I could.
Awesome.
Yeah, I'm here, I guess, both with a bit of a, because I'm stuck, and also to hear what other people are saying. For the people who aren't Dylan and Monica in the session, I'm trying to start a podcast about biomimicry, and I'm stuck at the beginning with the intro episode. I've done a rough recording and shared it to a few people, and I'm really stuck with what I want the tone of the show to be, like how much humor I want to inject into it, versus, like, I just feel like before I start recording, like, I've done an interview with Jamie, which was good, and sent it to people, and I think that was good. But for the episodes that I do by myself, like, I feel like before I record, I have to like pick a target audience of like, is it people who will stay for the personality, or is it people who will stay for just concrete information? And like, I don't know. I just don't know. I've tried to re-record this first episode. And besides struggling a bit to know how much detail to go into in the first episode, like, I've also like lost interest in, to do the podcast, I'm gonna have to consume a lot of media and learn a lot about what's going on in the world of biomimicry, and I just haven't wanted to do it. I don't know why. I don't know if I'm just overwhelmed by the project, but I'm kind of just putting it, I said I'll put it off till March because I have to finish a permaculture design course final project. And that's got a due date. So I'm going to do that first. But then in a few weeks, I want to get back to this. And I've just kind of like been staring at a screen for a while.
Yeah, thanks, Ben, for kind of filling us in. I'm curious why you wanted to start a podcast in the first place. Do you remember?
That's a good question. I did a CPR, so maybe I should look back at that. It was probably either like, sometimes I get so excited about things, I feel like I need to share them with people. Like I just need to talk.
Right.
And I feel like this is one thing I did say in my first intro recording is like, it's easy to get really depressed about what's going on environmentally. And like biomimicry is something that I think brings a lot of hope. So I want to kind of, like, I've wanted to start some sort of regenerative media series for a while, and I think biomimicry is kind of more of a niche way to do that. So I think that was kind of it. Okay.
I think like going back to that purpose statement in your CPR may bring you back to the reason you're going to do that. And I use my CPRs all the time because the purpose, as I mentioned in the course, it's like, that's your rudder. That's giving you direction, and it's giving you a reason to head in that direction. So holding on to that purpose might be a place to start, and just re-engaging with that energy. And I'm going to say, like, even you just sharing what you just did, I'm really excited to listen to this podcast. And another way to think about this is that you're actually denying people your own, the brilliance and excitement by just keeping it to yourself and just stalling on this. I know that's kind of harsh criticism, but there's something really beautiful about your perspective and what you bring to the world that I think needs to be heard. and the way you communicated. I think the feedback that we gave to you on your first podcast was pretty genuine, and all of us were pretty excited by how you presented it. I still remember clearly what my feedback was. So this is all to say, go back to that purpose statement and see if you can find that energy again for why you did it. The other thing, which is more advice, is I've gone through that process of thinking about starting a podcast and then like overthinking who the audience is and how I should present myself. And eventually what happened is I never did a podcast. And so maybe part of me is living vicariously through you, that I want to really support you in doing this. And the only way you're going to find your audience is when you have an audience. And right now you don't have an audience. So it's like, just put it out there and you're going to grow. Like, use the biomimicry mindset. Like a tree doesn't know what shape it's going to be in 50 years. It's going to take time and iterations. It's going to take feedback, and it's going to take courage to grow. But just start with your small feedback. And I'm sure too, you're only going to have, I doubt you're going to have 500,000 followers off the bat. So it's like, you'll get some feedback from a small group who's going to be a part of your core. Very similar to how I started this course. Like, you guys are my core, and we're using this to get feedback. And, you know, I got to take criticism, but the criticism helps me grow. It's like, again, that biomimicry mindset. So, I know that's like advice, but I guess hopefully I want to really encourage you to keep pushing on this, because I think you've got something really special. And I wouldn't invest my energy if I didn't believe so.
Thanks. Yeah, I think I probably just need to think less and just do it. I think maybe I need to not do the intro episode first. The thing about the intro episode is, like, for the following, I think I need a reference for people who aren't familiar with biomimicry. The feedback I've gotten so far for people who listen to just the interview I did with you is some of them needed a primer. And so it's like, I need this to be perfect. If this is like the episode that I'm going to continually refer people to listen back to through the entire series, like, I think I want to reference it at the beginning of every episode. So maybe I just like should do other episodes first and build up a little bit of a bank, and then maybe I'll feel more comfortable about it. But I think that's why I'm like going so crazy about this intro, because I think it's going to be a very permanent episode. So
I think that's a fair idea. Like, I think that's good to just go and build up a bank. The other thing to consider is, I know a very famous podcaster who gets a few million downloads. He's redone his intro after like 3 years. So you can have an intro and recognize it might just be a placeholder for a better intro in the future. And you can still refer to it in all your other episodes and like have the same content, but you just do it in a better delivery. So
yeah, I can do that.
Yeah, there's lots of options here.
I really appreciate where the conversation is headed, because that's what these sessions are for. I'm kind of with Jamie in the sense that you're not going to nail it the first time, so you kind of have to approach it with a more regenerative mindset. And the other thing that I was thinking is, maybe you can test there. Maybe there are ways to test the communication or the messages through other platforms. So maybe Twitter. I'm not sure if you're big on Twitter, but if you like drop a few nuggets on Twitter and see how people engage with that, that can give you an idea of like, what are the topics or things that you can talk about in podcasts. So maybe it's like, you have an idea of a podcast and you kind of put it out there as an idea first. And depending on the feedback that you get, you can dive in more and or like follow through with a podcast instead of like spending time on it, doing it. So I guess what I'm trying to say is trying to find a quick feedback loop that can inform the episodes that you can make. Could be a good idea that can reassure what you want to put out there. I also know that if you really have a calling for saying something, you intuitively know who it's for.
Mm-hmm.
So not overthinking that as well, but really appreciate it. You know, how how open you are about the whole process, Ben. Thank you.
Thanks. That's maybe I could test out little segments on Instagram. I think that could be a good idea.
Ben, also
Or
like,
or stories perhaps. Sorry, Jamie. You know, on stories they're ephemeral, so you'll see kind of like stats and go from there. Some people erase their feed and they start over, right, for like a week, and they just post 3 things and then like start again. So yeah.
I was gonna say too, Ben, if you want us to post questions for you in the Biomimicry Frontiers handle, we're totally in for that. Like, we could be your test bed.
Yeah, that'd be great. I'll let you know.
Okay.
That's an awesome idea, Jamie. Yeah, that would be really cool. That would be a good way to like higher scale feedback, larger scale.
Like what people, like if someone started a podcast, what would you look for? Like that kind of question.
Yeah.
Okay.
Whatever. It's like, or topics. It's like, here's 5 topics I'd be interested in. Everyone vote. I think there's voting features on stories.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a good idea. I'll think of a few things.
So I guess, Ben, just to get clear, you have our episode. Do you have other episodes in the hopper? Like, have you completed other episodes?
No.
Okay.
I know I'm gonna do one on the adaptive cycle, and then an interview with, I think I'll do an interview with Jenny. I have to check back in with her about like personal resilience and the adaptive cycle.
Yeah.
And then I have a bunch of other ideas that are just babies.
Okay, that's great. I think what's holding you back from doing the adaptive cycle one?
Maybe it's not as much. I think I'm also just like, how the hell do I structure a whole episode? Like I've never really, it's like, writing a story. So I think I'm just getting a bit of cold feet before I even start. Like how do I tell a story? I don't have a lot of experience with it.
How did you do the first one? The original intro?
I just randomly wrote it down in a cafe one day without thinking.
I think, I know we've already talked about this, but I think I remember you saying, you might go back to the cafe and do it again. What made your first one so attractive was that it felt unscripted. And I think as a listener, like people, with everything being so polished now, I think there's something really special about a raw vulnerability of somebody just shooting from the hip, or just like saying what comes to mind and having some mess ups here and there. I would love for you to like find a way to just book a time and write an adaptive cycle one and commit to it. And it's like, even if it's not perfect.
Yeah.
I say that from experience. I rewrote my PhD thesis probably like 45 times, and it was so annoying because if I look back, it's like it's all the same material. It's just moving around words, and it's not any better. It just wasted 1.5 years of my life. I don't want you to do what I did.
Yeah.
Yeah. So is there anything that we could help you? Like, could you make a commitment and like maybe we have a check-in? Like, are you willing to do that where you make a commitment that you're going to go right within this time period? And
yeah, I'll figure out. I don't know on the spot right now what because I think I want to just for the next 2 weeks focus on the permaculture thing and just be in one mind. But then maybe the week or two after that, get something done.
okay.
I know a low-hanging fruit, perhaps. Why don't we poll 5 topics for a podcast on Frontiers on our Instagram, and just to see what people would be into, to kind of help you with like potential episodes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be good. I could do that. I could come up with 5 topics and send it to you.
Cool.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure we'll get a better idea of like what people are more into, and that can definitely help guide a little bit.
Yeah, that would be great. and maybe poll people on their favorite podcasts to see what
Yeah.
people are listening to.
Hey, the more polls, the better.
Yeah.
Bring on the polls.
Anyway, I want to let someone else go if they want to talk. I appreciate the help.
You're getting some good feedback over on the chat, Ben. Have a look. The other thing I want to end with is I reconnected with Janine Benyus a couple weeks ago for an event for Claire Janich. And Janine brought up her favorite topic right now is the adaptive cycle, that she's reading a lot of this Buzz Halling stuff. So it's like, get out there, put a podcast out there. And I think like this is where biomimicry is going to go. I think people are realizing the adaptive cycle is a really powerful tool. And if the queen of biomimicry is saying it's her favorite
Write
topic,
a book about it.
what's that?
She'll write a book about it now.
He's going to write a book about it. So get that podcast first.
Yeah, I just wanted to add one quick thing. I think this is a super cool adventure, Ben. And I think what I'm kind of hearing also is there's a lot of kind of weight and like pressure to do it perfect because you're super passionate about it, I assume. And also you see the opportunity that biomimicry can have on a global scale. And you want to have that big impact, as a lot of us do. And that can also, carry a lot of weight because that's a big task. But yeah, I think definitely echo what Jamie and everyone and Raul has said, that once you start, it'll just continue to evolve and shape how you want it to, or it'll shape really what it turns out to be through getting feedback and just doing it. And as they said in the chat, that nature is definitely quite perfect, but I don't think nature started that way and has failed numerous times. And through failure, you can just keep evolving and keep growing. And I think through doing art personally, starting is always the hardest thing. But then once you start to put some color on the paper, it all kind of just starts to lead itself in a way. Obviously you can get to different hurdles, but I'm definitely, once I get to a point in art, I tend to get scared to continue and to kind of take that further step to make it, deeper. And I've had teachers come over and just like put a ton of like just a blotch of ink all over my painting. And then I'd have to take that and kind of redefine, or not redefine, but like rework with that and turn it into something new, or maybe usually turns out better, but pushing through that hurdle is definitely hard, but it can be beautiful as well.
That's awesome.
Also, who was in our first cohort, Christy Droopman, I'll put in the chat, Brown, Grow, Green. I really love her style of presenting things because she's covering environmental issues and they're very heavy, but she does it in a very light manner with recognizing the pain, but it's a way to kind of embrace the joy with that and the hope, as you were talking about, and really just centering it around a story, which I think is so powerful, just to talk one-on-one or with a community and just share each other's stories is like, I don't know, to me, very powerful. And when I'm listening to podcasts that are just story-based, seen from like Indigenous communities, that's how they pass knowledge. That can be extremely powerful. And that doesn't have to be perfect either. It just has to be, your story.
Thanks, Tom. That's awesome. One last thing, Ben, I think if the intro is a barrier right now, just forget about the intro. I think your next podcast should be the adaptive cycle. And again, from experience, it's like a longer term vision is hard to crystallize. It's like hard to see the details, and that's gonna, like, you trying to have that long-term arc, is gonna be disruptive to the process. So it's like, have a blurry vision of what you want to do and just like put your head down and just like keep heading towards that vision. you will be surprised at how it manifests itself. And that's like, I had that experience with the company Frontiers. Like, I didn't know what we were, but I just kept heading in that direction. And now it's like, now I'm starting to see it's still going to change, but it's manifesting in really beautiful ways. So just have a blurry vision and keep heading towards that blurry vision.
Great comments, everybody.
Is there anything else, Ben, that you need? And you can be selfish here and take up time. It can be your time.
No, that's all right. I feel a lot better about it. I think I know kind of how to get past the hurdle. So
Would you mind just sharing kind of what you're thinking so I can hear what you're taking away?
yeah, so to go off the cuff, I feel like I have to know enough in my brain to be able to not look at a screen. So I think I'll do more research on the adaptive cycle so that I feel like I can just start recording and talk about it. And I think I'll do that episode. I think I'll reach back out to Jenny, see if she wants to do an interview still, because I think that will be easier. And then, I mean, I think I basically know what I want to talk about with the intro. There's one thing I want to add. So I think I will just record it without looking at any script and just do it. And like, I could delete it, but like at least just try to record again.
Totally. Okay, that sounds great. If you need any support on the adaptive cycle research, please let me know.
Okay.
Yeah, because I mean, it was big part of my PhD. So I have lots of like journal articles and general articles that you can pull from.
Cool.
Awesome, man. Keep it up, man. I think you've got something really special. So I really hope you can see through this.
Yeah,
Anyone
Sven,
else?
please, you gotta drop that podcast at least on Frontier's website, at least.
You'll definitely be the first to know once I get it up.
Awesome.
Awesome.
Anyone else want to give Ben anything or have something for themselves that they want to explore or unpack?
Thanks for making it, Suhail and Grace.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
Hi guys, can I jump in? It's Sudela.
Yeah, of course.
Nice to hear everybody. I'm sorry I have my camera off because I'm driving home, so I'm listening to you like you're a podcast. It's very good. I'd like to keep listening. I was just gonna say I totally hear what Ben's saying, like that feeling of like, I don't know if I have enough material. I don't know if I know it well enough. But I have a feeling that a lot of people he'll be presenting to might have not a clue what the adaptive cycle is.
Yeah.
So any information that he's got is going to be good information. So it's not getting adjudicated or anything. And
Yeah.
I would say the only thing for Ben to get to know in his podcast is just to get a feel for who is listening. Like he said, get to know his audience, even if it's an audience of 4 or 3, that's okay. But why are they there? Why are they listening? And then who knows what'll happen after that.
So yeah, I think that's such a great point. Like the adaptive cycle thing, your audience probably will have never heard of it. So the more of an expert you are, actually might take you further away from communicating it to them. Because like in expertise, you get so narrow-minded, you get so deep into the weeds that you forget how to communicate to the general public. So I think you're actually in a beautiful spot to already communicate it. And if you remember, part of your theme and like what makes you unique is that you're going on a journey and you're bringing listeners with you. So you don't have to have all the answers. And I think that's a really cool way of framing this podcast, is like your exploration and we get to go along for the ride. So you could have like 5 versions or like 5 episodes on the adaptive cycle. Like this could be adaptive cycle like 100, the basics. And then you talk to Jenny, it's like, hey, this is somebody applying it in real life. That's like 2.0. And then you talk to, you know, world leading researcher, and you never know where it's going to go.
I really like that. It's very humbling because you show that, you know, you might not be the expert, but you're learning it with the audience. You're just, you know, conveying it. That's really cool.
Yeah, I like the concept. I think it could even be fleshed out a little more, but it's like you're taking them on a ride and they can kind of inform what they want to listen to as well. So if you present it that way, I think it's definitely attractive. I think really the adaptive cycle is so powerful and there's so much to do around there still. So you would be another champion from another angle. It'd be really cool.
Well,
Yeah,
Thanks for the comment, Tuhela.
Yeah, thank you for those are all good thoughts. I appreciate it.
I'm curious if anyone else has a specific thing that they want to bring up to the Commons and get some advice or insight on.
I will if nobody else wants to jump in.
Sounds great.
So I'm working on something I've never actually done in detail before, and that's make a business pitch. And I like it. I'm learning a lot. And over Jamie, you and I, we were talking about this a couple of days ago, actually. But well, I'll put it in a nutshell for everybody else listening. The problem that my business is trying to solve is that generally the disengaged connection that a lot of humans have with nature ensures the perils of both. That means how are we ever going to take care of something that we're not connected with, which all of us in this listening group get that, I think. And the problem I have, well, it's not a problem, but it's a very specific question, is I'm down to the market part of my business pitch, and what the overall project is essentially a farmstead or a rural site on which people can have access to the land, but not necessarily only as a tourist. So it depends on what level of engagement they want. And the whole thing is every piece of connection that there could possibly be with that landscape is actually the living bond between humans and nature. So maybe that's just being physically active. Maybe it's actually producing something off that land. Maybe you're a early years teacher and you've got 12 kids there once a week or 5 days a week, right? So it's some way that people physically and mentally connect to nature, and the end result is both, meaning humans and nature, both have a positive impact just by use of the site. So that's one of the things that sets the project apart, is that in other nature connected projects, I'll call it that, you know, a lot of times the goal is zero impact. Well, this is not zero impact, this is positive impact. So even if you just want to come for a walk on the trails, there would be a bowl of wildflower seeds, and you could just literally toss them over your shoulder and hope for the best. But in a few months' time, you might have some wildflowers popping up. It's just that kind of thing, right up to much more intensive activities. So my thing on the market page is, how do I make this? One of the comments I've had from one person that I was talking to about this project, they said, what a great idea, but it sounds like something that would be really hard to monetize. Like, who's going to give you money for that? I was like, huh. It's like, what do you mean? But it was actually it was good comment. And he's not somebody that's against the project. He'd be somebody quite interested in using it. But it was like, if you're looking for partners to acquire land, so these are high ticket people, who's going to give you money for that? And I thought, okay, so what am I doing now? Like, am I doing like environmental economics? Like, this is how much we need to spend on the project. This is how much potential revenue there is, blah, blah. But what's the part that sets it apart is monetarily, like in dollar value. Is this how much we improve the environment by? Like, I don't know. That's my question.
So Suhaila, is the question really about how do you position the financial structure of this?
Yeah, it could be, or it could really be what, I guess on my marketing page, like the market page, which is kind of the go-to page of the whole pitch, like, right?
Yeah.
If anybody's going to give money, they're going to be like,
Yeah.
whatever, I've got X, how much am I going to make back? So they're going to look at that page. What's going to turn them on?
Right.
Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. This
like,
is
why
great.
this business versus another business?
Yes. Yeah. So we'll send you, I have it's like a 5-step pitch deck it's like, they call it the greatest pitch deck I've ever seen. And it lays out pretty much 5 slides that you could sell your idea to a company.
Oh, okay.
And I've used it.
Okay.
One of the things that like stands out is you have a really good why, like why you're doing this, and it's just the inverse of your problem statement. It's like you're
right.
creating space for reconnection that benefits both.
Yeah.
For the benefit of both.
Yeah.
There's a couple things that are coming to mind, and I'm just going to kind of share them. One, I have a friend who works at I have a friend who works at Google, and all of their business ventures have no economic plan, meaning all they're trying to do is they're trying to get 1 billion users, and once they have 1 billion users, then they figure out how to finance it. So he worked at Google Photos, and Google Photos was free, and they get to 1 billion people using it, and now all of a sudden they can figure out how to make a lot of money really quickly. So that just came to my mind. It's like, if you can sell a vision that will bring a lot of people together, and like a lot of people want to be on this thing. And the other thought I had was the best way to share that vision is to do the design fiction, like really paint a picture of how this is going to be like transforming people's lives. And once you could, like, once any economist or anyone with money can see how a lot of people can come together for a positive thing, and like then you can start to strategize how to inject money and how to make money. Now I know that that's not what a business like course is going to want. They're going to want the financials, and like they want you to break down costs, revenue, profits, and all that stuff. And like maybe that's we set up another time where it's one, like I'd love to see your vision, or maybe we chat about how we could make money, or how maybe you bring it to the commons and say like, okay, let's imagine 400 people a day coming to this place. How could we generate revenue, or how could we finance this thing? And in fact, I just did this with the Métis Nation of Alberta. And like, we've got glamping sites, we've got like night sky visions, we've got cross country skiing. Like we can figure it out based on the land, but just like, maybe like just really paint a picture of how people are how you can get a lot of people there, and what they'll be doing. Like yours sounds more about reconnection. So maybe there's meditation workshops, or like guided walking tours, or who knows.
Yeah. And it's interesting when you talk about how many people, because I'm really clear in my mind that this project is only going to be for so many people, because there's only a certain carrying capacity to every site.
Perfect.
And I'm not going to cross that. You know what I mean? It's not going to become a consumed site.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, we've all been to the apple orchard with the strollers in the mud and all that crap. I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
It's the whole point is that people would go there because it feels like your own place.
Yeah.
You're not gonna run into the, you know, Tim Hortons touting casual hiker that is not equipped. Like, it's not gonna be there.
So this is awesome because you're creating exclusivity, and exclusivity is a hot selling item, especially for rich people. So I could see this being a tiered approach where it's like you can have exclusive backcountry cabins or whatever it is that's like $5,000 a night or whatever it is. Like, give them an experience like they've never had in their life, and people will pay, and they could help kind of fund, you know, the lower income opportunities, or like maybe you have weekends for at-risk youth that get to use that cabin as well. You could do a tiered approach, but exclusivity is going to make it really hot.
Yeah,
So,
and I like what you said about, because that is kind of what I was starting to do was, but you put it a bit better into words, you know, to illustrate how this transforms people's lives. And I mean, years ago when I worked in Bermuda, I started writing an article about this, and it really, I think it was just called The Economics of the Environment. Like, you know, like I appreciate all the big stories, like too much plastic in the ocean and all, like all that stuff. But for a straight up finance person, the only thing that matters to them is the numbers.
yeah.
So it's like, great, if we clean up the ocean, how much is it going to cost us? And don't tell me there's more fish in the sea. Tell me what that's worth.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
that part. And I started doing this actually with my sister. She's an aquaculturalist. But anyway, it was really quite interesting. And that's what I was actually starting to do with this project, was say, okay, so this is some of the results of the lives you'll transform. And it's not just people, right? Like it's the site itself gets better, and then 1% of all my profits goes back to global conservancy programs. So, you know, that's the ripple effect, right? Like I can itemize out that, you know, X dollars per year will increase, you know, 75 square feet of reef or whatever it might be, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I do have to go and pick up Oscar, but I think the last thing I'll say, Suhail, is like, if I were you, I'd figure out a way to get as much money from the richest people on the planet at your thing, and everything else will kind of figure itself out. Like, I know that you're a good-hearted person, and so that you're not there to make money, but for this to succeed, I think you have to do a Robin Hood here and exploit the rich people as much as possible. And I could see, like, one idea that came to my head is find out what rich people need. And from my experience with like billionaires is like there's like a spiritual unfulfillment. And it's like, what if you created a spiritual experience for hyper rich people where you had the best spiritual guide or whatever psychologists come in, and they get a weekend in nature immersed with this person, just them, where they can deepen their connection to the natural world unlike anything they've ever had in their life. It's $25,000. It's like a week. It's like high. And like,
it's your place. Yeah.
Yeah. And then it's like, you can, everything from there. I call that the Tesla model too. Like, Elon built the super expensive roadster first, and now he's getting us like middle class and lower incomes, trying to get us closer to the electric car. That'd be my advice to you. Is like,
that's interesting. I like it. Yeah.
Exploit
no,
the
it
rich.
makes a lot of sense. Yeah. And you're totally right. The site ultimately is not just for the rich, but it's a balancing act, right? Like, when they're not there, don't worry, somebody else will be using that.
Totally.
It'll be the rich that will have paid for it anyway. But right, that's how the world works. Okay, that's really helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, have fun too. This is it's exciting.
Yeah. All right. That's my cue.
We got all right. Thanks so much, everyone. I think we're going to do this again, Raul?
Yeah, I would love to. Please let me know your thoughts. An hour doesn't seem to be enough when we really get in deep, but thank you guys for sharing your experiences and a little bit about your plans. I'll get back to you with some recos. But yeah, we'll do this again once a month. I'm going to check back with Jamie when, and we'll let you know.
Awesome. Thanks so much, everyone. Great to see you.
Awesome. Thanks so much. Take care, everyone.
But
Good to see everybody. Take care.